open and honest. Let's get started. I will be saying the first question, and this can be directed to anyone. During elementary school, we were taught about bullying and the consequences of a bully's actions. As we mature, schools have to reinforce different social issues like drugs and vandalism. As we mature, schools have to reinforce different social issues like drugs or vandalism, meaning some students may forget to be respectful to others. Do you think that if we don't keep teaching how to maintain an anti-bullying environment in middle school, students will be bullies to their peers?
I can answer this. Should I start?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, I really appreciate this question, and my first thoughts are it's interesting to think about vandalism and drugs as social issues. I think that as a counselor, I often see those kinds of behaviors usually as indications of some kind of need. Oftentimes some kind of emotional or even mental health need that that child is experiencing. And so I see it as being my role as a counselor to both empower students to be upstanders and have that empowerment and feeling of being able to stand up for what is right, and also being able to really support students in having positive emotional and social mental health, so that some of those behaviors, which are very much related, oftentimes can be mitigated, and those students can get the supports that they might need. So those are my initial thoughts. I'll let Lauren respond as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely an important thing. I think a lot of times when we're focusing on anti-bullying campaigns and stuff like that, I think a lot of times they're really well-intentioned, but a lot of times what I think is the best focus is when kids and students actually feel and experience kindness and doing well for others and stuff like that. I think that's what leaves more of a lasting impact. So I think as we, move forward in our society in general and in education, really looking at how we're treating other people and how we're experiencing those anti-bullying things is really important to feel those positive effects, because that's what makes the change.
I would also just add on and thinking about what Lauren just said, that power of feeling that sense of being kind. And I know I work with middle school students, so often students, are the really the eyes and the ears of this community, and they see those needs and they see instances where people are treated unfairly and unkindly. And so we depend on student voice, and I think it's also our job as educators to really have clear ways for students to share their input, particularly on these issues, is super important.
I appreciate you sharing your voice and being upstanders. The next question is going to be coming from Noelani.
Hi. Okay, so this question can go to either one of you. It's very important to me. In our country, we still have to fight for gender equality, and sometimes those who have a strong opinion on the subject go to school and unknowingly belittle and may even bully others for their individual opinions. If someone came to you while being bullied by someone because someone is being prejudiced towards others because of their gender, how would you deal with the situation? It's not so easy to simply ignore comments, as I have lots of experience with trying and failing to ignore comments that come at the expense of others. How would you try to help those with these opinions see and understand the other side of things, but they don't necessarily have to change their own opinion on the subject?
I guess I could start. Yeah, I think that last part is really important, is that a lot of times you're not going to change someone's opinion, but having the conversation is what the important thing is. You know, we can all have differences of opinion, but it's not okay to treat someone in a way that's bullying or belittling or, you know, whatever. I would say, kind of piggybacking on the last question, having other people who stand up for kids and let counselors know, let other people know, so that we're aware of situations is super important. But I guess the biggest thing I would say is to not ignore it. I think giving that as a piece of advice is kind of one-sided. I think a lot of times someone might think that's well-intentioned, but it's kind of one-sided. It's not to ignore it, but to find someone who can support you if you don't think you can support yourself. And then if it's possible, having a conversation with the other person or people involved, because I think a lot of times people that act that way don't have the self-awareness of what their actions are doing to others.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with Lauren on all of that. I think that I appreciate your sharing of your concern and the specifically gender-based harassment or bullying. I think that the idea of the importance of needing bringing people together, and for those who are using derogatory language or harassing or bullying, need to sometimes have the support of adults to help them understand the impact of their words and actions. And also, I think that we have an important job to empower you all as young people, and you know, who are very savvy and very aware of gender equality and the importance, to not accept, just ignore it as an answer. So to be, as Lauren was saying, seeking out adults who you can really trust to advocate for your rights, and kind of that power of being able to get that support, I think, is really important.
Mahalo. I appreciate how you were talking about how we need to reach out to adults and not just other students, because I feel as though there's a stigma around going to adults for help. So students usually go to their peers, and although it's a good decision to go to someone when you have problems, it's just not always the best decision, because sometimes I feel that people our age we don't have the right mindset to go through with problems like these. So thank you.
Okay, so sorry, but I'd like to add to that. I was definitely in that position where, you know, I thought maybe boys could be, you know, stronger or more tough. When I was in elementary school, I remember that, you know, I didn't think I could play on the good field, playing with all the boys, even though I love to play soccer, and, you know, I would have to play on the pavement or anything. And then you just have to have like a radical, you know, just a hope that you'll fit in, or have, again, what Ms. Sangster said, an encouraging friend. I had this one friend, and she did not care what anybody thought about her, and she just did whatever she wanted, and I just look up to that. And, you know, then I started playing with the boys, and I beat them all, so I'm so glad I made that decision.
The next comment, I believe, comes from Chloe.
I can definitely relate to what Sophia said about like the toughness part, like especially in PE, when it's like a male PE teacher, they're always very like they really like the boys in the class. So it's kind of hard because like you can't say anything to the teacher, obviously, because like they're the teacher, and you can't. It's kind of like it feels like you're being disrespectful in a way. So I can relate to that. And then also to what Noelani said about how like sometimes going to an adult, like there's a stigma towards it because like students see it kind of as snitching, you know? So I think getting rid of that idea and seeing it more as like we're doing it to help each other and create like a good environment between each other is a better way to think of it instead of like snitching and getting somebody in trouble. Yeah.
Can I add on to that super quick? I just wanted to say something about the teacher, saying you can't go to the teacher. I realize that would be a very uncomfortable thing to do, but I do want to encourage you to, if that happens, like still go to an adult in the building, or if you do feel comfortable with the teacher, going to them, because as professionals in the education field, we're constantly looking at the way our teaching practices are affecting kids. And if you feel that way, chances are many other people feel that way. And it would be better for other people in the environment. And chances are also that teacher doesn't know that that's how their behavior is being perceived. So if you do have the ability to find an adult that you trust, to still speak up, because it's not disrespectful if you do it in a positive way.
Thank you.
I would also add just one last thought on that, because I love this question. I love hearing from all of you. Is I think as I can speak from my own perspective as a female. I think often we are told to be respectful and maybe feel like if we do say something that we're being disrespectful. And I would just like to encourage that to be disrupted. And I think that starts with young people speaking up and feeling empowered. And so I just think that's something that I would like to add to this conversation.
Yeah, thank you. That is true. I didn't even consider that as I was saying that. So that's something to think about when I'm considering talking to somebody, or even in any conversation. Like, is it really necessary for me to be quiet right now, or should I bring up something that needs to be said?
Ku'ulei has something to add.
Just adding on to that as kind of like a question. So how do you recommend, I guess, confronting the teacher, or would you recommend confronting the teacher if the teacher is the one being like gendered biased, if it's subconscious? And also I've had teachers who have like purposely been, I guess, biased towards like certain genders, or will say things that kind of suppress. I don't know how to phrase it. Like I had this specific teacher that would pick on like the boys more than the girls because he felt the girls were like weaker, and so he wouldn't call on them as much and he wouldn't make fun of them, and he wouldn't ask for their like opinions in class.
I would say it depends on the relationship that you have with the teacher. I would say generally you would probably want to go to someone who's not the teacher, because that could be a really uncomfortable conversation to have. You might down the road be able to have a conversation with that teacher after you've talked to somebody else. But maybe starting with another staff member would be a good way to go.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think counselors and even like your school principal or assistant principal or dean, if you have those kinds of supports, are always also good people to go to.
Thank you. That was very that was very clarifying. Would it be beneficial to sit down with like another adult as well and have like a conference, or would it be better to go one-on-one? Because again, going back to the snitching thing, even though it's a teacher, I feel like sometimes students don't feel comfortable talking to other, I guess, adults in the building about a teacher that has been causing, I guess, issues for them or other, just their class in general. Would you recommend like having a meeting or going to them as a group of students, or just like personally to make it comfortable for both?
I don't think there's necessarily a right answer. I think that it kind of depends on the situation. If you're talking to an adult that's not the teacher, I was setting question, that's not the right wording, but you know what I mean. The one who you're having an issue with, then I think it's whatever you're comfortable with. If you're comfortable with that adult talking one-on-one or going with another student, going as a group to confront the teacher you're having an issue with might not get your point across very well because they would probably be on the defensive from the beginning. But I think it all just depends on how you set up the meeting and the tone that you take going into it. I think all could be successful depending on how they're done.
Yeah, I would agree with Miss Sangster, and I know something that I try to practice a lot is having those restorative conversations and having you know, if I'm doing a conflict mediation with two students, I always try to have an adult with each student and sort of do the necessary prep work, which for me always involves making sure that the person who has been harmed shares the impact, is able to share fully the impact, the emotional impact, whatever the impact is, with the person who's caused the harm, whether it was intentional or not. And so sometimes that would involve a face-to-face conversation. I've experienced times where maybe the you know, if you want to use the term victim, or the person who received the mistreatment maybe doesn't feel safe having a face-to-face conversation, depending on what the situation is. And so maybe that means writing it down. But whatever the format is, I think that it's really important, because sometimes adults may not be conscious of the bias or the mistreatment. Sometimes it could be a conscious thing. And in either case, it is incredibly important to understand the impact and to try to repair sort of that community relationship.
Thank you. That was very insightful. I will definitely have to take those strategies into account. I have seen a couple of those incidents at my school, and so it's less with social distance learning, but if we ever get back to school, that will definitely be something I will use.
If no one has anything to add, the next question will be from Kahoku.
What is a way you can motivate your friends to see their counselor more often, to make a student feel as if they're in a safe, supportive, and welcoming environment?
I think, first of all, I think it's wonderful that you all are thinking, or whoever thought of this question was thinking about how to encourage your peers or your friends to see the counselor. I think that idea of stigma that one of you mentioned, I forget who mentioned it, but I think a couple people mentioned that there's sometimes a stigma at school about going to the counselor's office or going to talk to an adult. So I've often seen students, you know, go with their friend as kind of that support, and that can be really, really helpful. Or maybe it's encouraging your friend to, if they don't feel comfortable or familiar with the counselor, maybe going through a teacher or another adult first, and that adult can also encourage that to make sure that your friend is feeling supported.
Yeah, I don't really have much to add. I think that the biggest thing is the stigma. There's such a stigma around just mental health in general, and that's a big thing. So just encouraging them that it's okay, it's normal, that it's a positive thing, supporting them, going with them, those types of things. So I echo all of what Erin said.
Do you have anything to add, Sophia?
Yes. So yeah, like from my perspective, I just feel like a roadblock or something in my counselor's way, because they have to take care of 500 kids, and maybe my problem isn't on their list. And I think a way that I would just help my friends become more comfortable with going to the counselor is I'd probably suggest to the counselor, like, oh, I think my friend maybe needs help. And just by that, I think the friend will automatically know that they're in a safer place because you care about them and, you know, you're willing to do something for their mental health. And, you know, if I was in that position, and I would just feel so loved, and to have friends that who care about my mental health, I just really appreciate it.
Is there anyone else who wants to add? Okay, so we have a follow-up question from Kina.
There you go. Sorry.
What do students think they can do to create a more calm and collective environment?
Oh, did they hear you?
Did you hear me?
Oh.
Anyone can start.
To students, like to us?
Yes.
Okay, well, I guess I'll answer. Well, something, I like how you guys recommended that we can always come with like a supportive friend who encourages us to go to the counselor's office. But I think there's also this idea that people are uncomfortable going to a counselor, not only because there's a stigma around it, but because they're not comfortable going to an adult that they don't necessarily know very well. Because I know if you're just, like I'm going into high school now. So if I were to go into high school and I barely even know the counselor, I barely know the students around me, first of all, I think I'd just be uncomfortable in the environment itself. So I think there's also this feeling that I think, not to be like, I don't want to be like rude or something, but I think you guys also have to put yourselves out there. And I know you guys try your best, but I also think there's this feeling that it's this adult you really don't know much about, and you're going into this new environment and you're just uncomfortable. So I think the idea that if it's this feeling where we're comfortable with you because we know who you are and we know that you're there for us and you're there to help us and just make us feel more comfortable wherever we may be, I think that would help a lot with this whole stigma around counselors, because no one's trying to do harm. It's just the fact that there may be this sense of wary around going to an adult we don't necessarily know.
Adding on to that, I agree with a lot of what you said. When I entered high school, we didn't really get to know our counselors very much. It was more of a, hey, come check in with us like once a year so we can make sure you have like your schedule ready for next year, and that was it. I don't really feel like I've been able to get to know my counselors as well because maybe they didn't get the opportunity to introduce themselves to me personally, and I understand because you guys deal with a lot of students. Also, I guess it's kind of up to the student sometimes to come talk to you and build a relationship, but it's nice to have like a first step put out by the counselors, especially when you're freshmen coming into high school. It can be a little bit more intimidating to talk to adults for some reason. I don't know why, that's just how we are. But yeah.
So for me, I have two things to add. One is that I actually went to therapy. So I went to this person, his name was James, and what was like, well, I went when I was younger, but still, when I went, it was like calming because he would like always like we'd introduce each other, and then he'd talk like, oh, what do you like to do, what's like this, and then like he would say, oh, would you like a piece of gum, like what do you like, do you want to draw? And so once we actually got into our session, we would start talking about like my life and what happened and like why I'm here. And I think what I opened up more to was that Auntie Lei was here, and I knew she was here, so I opened up and I was like, whatever happens, she's here. Sorry. It'd be fine. And yeah, after that, I felt safe because I knew my family was God damn.
We can come back to you.
I just like to acknowledge just the bravery and strength that you're showing right now. And I just want to really honor that.
Okay, go ahead.
Sorry. So yeah, and it was also because of the setting, because it was like not too bright. It was kind of like in the middle, like you're calm, the room was calm, and you just felt safe. And I think that was what really opened. And I think we're still in contact with him. He's pretty close to our family and stuff. We're also close to Katie, our social worker, and sorry. And then my second thing to add was that in Aloha, my high school I go to, I'm a sophomore. They're very open and they're very, very close. They're very family oriented. And so when you go there, it's not like, boom, you're there. It's high school. You have to adapt. What I liked though was that they like gradually took you in, and like the teachers are nice. There's no like mean teacher. Every teacher has their moments, and every student has their moments. I mean, that's school. But the fun thing was that like the counselors, they knew everybody. The teacher knows everybody. Even if you don't have the teacher's class, you know the teacher, and the teacher knows you. So the fun thing was that like, they can take you in, and like, if you need help, you're there. And so, like when one of my jobs I wanted to do, social worker, or like something that helps kids, like a counselor, or a teacher. And so, when I go in, so we have this like what do they call it? Where students, when they're not feeling good, or like they don't feel themselves, and they're having thoughts, they can go to this classroom, and they have like the teacher's there, and the room is like, it's very open and quiet, and like you feel safe, and that's what I think students were like, and the teachers are just very open, and the students feel calm, and they basically are there to share their thoughts and stuff. So I think that's a big factor in what they need. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing, Kahoku. If anybody else wants to add anything, we can be moving on to Meima's question.
Hi, my name is Meima. Miss Sangster, we could start off with you if that's okay. With this question, as a student who has been picked on, bullied in elementary school because of my race, the types of foods and meals I brought to school for lunch, and my attire, I notified my school counselor. And so my school counselor gave me the advice by saying, just ignore them and walk away. Everything will be fine. Nothing else will happen after you say that. But however, it was always a struggle because no matter what, it didn't stop the bully from continuously competing with me, following me, stepping on me. So what advice would you give to an elementary school student who was facing the same situation that happened to me?
Well, thank you for your question. I think, you know, the intent of the counselor was to, you know, help you to move past it by saying to ignore it. But I think we've kind of been over the fact that just ignoring stuff doesn't really make it any better. I think we probably also all heard the fact that when someone's doing that to somebody else, it's because they really have something inside that they need to deal with or have some feelings that they need to work out. And so I think really the counselor probably had some things on their end that they needed to do to help that student as well, that I hope that they did. Sounds like maybe not as much if it continued. I totally lost my place. But yeah, I think that we've also talked about respect, and clearly they don't respect you. And so you don't owe them any respect, and you need to just keep bringing the issues up to adults and to other people who will listen, because there are going to be adults who you feel like won't help you, unfortunately, in the world. And I wish that wasn't the case. But there are going to be people that is the case, but there are so many more that are going to help. And so to keep telling adults and to keep finding that safe place, because, you know, it will get better, but not to just ignore it. And then I would also just say, you know, I have so much respect for this organization and how much pride you guys have in yourselves, and don't lose that. And so don't let anyone who's bullying you or bring you down take that away from you. So I guess that's what I would, yeah.
Ms. Brock, do you have anything to add?
I don't know if I would just agree with everything. I think, yeah, just I am very impressed also by the strength of this group and the connections that you all have, and you utilize each other, which you're already doing. But I mean, we need to support each other, and the communities that we're a part of, whether they're in school or in the community or through efforts that we're involved in, those are all ways that you can get support as well. So I would just agree that is an unfortunate reality, that there will be people in your life who won't be able to help you the way that they should. And that's why we keep pushing through. And I would agree that there are far more people out there that are going to do the right thing. So yeah, that's what I would add.
Thank you for your inputs, because as obviously I've grown from being an elementary school student to a middle school student and now a freshman. And so I would remember there was this thing in elementary school, they would say if you had culture inside of you, if you were Asian or Mexican or anything like that, there was this different type of tables at the lunch table. The ones more closer to the right were the popular ones, where our school, my elementary school, was kind of Caucasian based. And so, so from the right table is the more popular, and then if you're the last table, then that was considered the non-popular table, I guess. And so there was this thing considered, for little kids like us, there was a thing called American lunch. So as I'm Japanese, so my mom obviously would pack these bentos with obviously rice and, little cutesy ideas to add to your lunch. And so I didn't feel that I fit in, because the students would, judge you with your, sorry. They would judge you with your lunch, and I know how my mom went through that, because she was from middle school to high school. She went to a American school because she was a exchange student, I guess. And so she wanted to learn English So she studied as a psychologist, and she became one later on in her future. So once she got to college, she kind of struggled a little bit because her English wasn't that good. And so obviously she told me that when I was younger, so I went to her because after I found out like with the counselor it didn't work out well, so I went to someone who I knew that I could connect with. And then she told me that no matter what, you're still the same person. Either if you don't have the same lunch, you're still the same person no matter what. Just because the different hair color is not going to change who you're going to be on the inside and out. And so after I went to school, after I talked to her when I went back to school, and the same person came back, and I just told him that you can say whatever you want. It's just not going to change me. And if you want to try to make me feel low, then just keep doing it. It's not going to change me as a person. So what's the point of continuously doing this to me when it's not going to affect me at all as a person? And so I feel that if you have that, like what Cole said, if you have that one person that you can connect with, then you don't have to worry about any of those struggles about fitting in, being in the, have low self-esteem and any of that. So thank you for your input.
I believe Noelani has something to say.
Yeah. So like Mema, but not exactly like Mema, I was bullied as well for a really, really long time. For a majority of the time I was in elementary school. And when I got to middle school, I was very happy because I felt, or not necessarily extremely happy, but there's this sense of relief because I felt that all these years of suffering were finally going to be over, and that I guess I could finally move on from it because I was, unlike Mema, I never went to anyone. I didn't even tell my parents until after it happened. Until I was in at least 7th grade, I didn't tell my parents. And I think I thought the impact of it wasn't going to be as bad because I was going into an environment where I knew absolutely no one. So I think it just gave me this sense of relief because it was going to finally be over. So I was really, and it's so terrible to say something like that because I was going into an environment where I was extremely uncomfortable and I knew absolutely no one, and I was relieved about it. But one of the reasons I never went to anybody about being bullied was because for a long time I didn't know who it was, because what it was they were putting notes. It was just notes every single day, sometimes 2 or 3 times a day in my desk. So I never even, for a really long time, I didn't know who it was. It was very anonymous. And then at one point I started thinking, what if it's more than one person? And I think I had this idea of if I change myself for them, maybe it'll stop. And I didn't, but that's not what I wanted to do. I didn't want to change myself for these people who barely knew me, because I think the experience itself made me stronger once I began to understand it more after it happened. But I guess my question was, there are a lot of students that get bullied every year that don't speak out about it. And for dance, I had a solo, and my solo, it was about how I was bullied, and that the fact I didn't speak out about it, and it was called Silence because I was quiet for a really long time about it. I didn't talk about it to anybody until it was over for at least 2 years. And I think it had a larger impact on me than I ever expected it to. And I think I'm definitely more open about it now because I understand that it's not like, if you're a student and you're going through something like this, go talk to someone. Like, don't be like me and stay quiet about it, because the reality is it's going to have a huge impact on you and the way you view society and the way you view other people in just in general. But I guess, how would you guys as counselors suggest students, or if it's anonymous and it's something anonymous and you don't know who specifically it is, and it's not something you can just tell like the person themselves, hey, you need to stop, because in the end I'm not going to care what you think. It wasn't that, like, I couldn't necessarily stop it from happening because I didn't know who it was or maybe who they were. And when I thought about it for a really long time, I thought, how is the counselor going to help me? How is someone going to help me if I don't even know who's doing this to me? So what would you guys suggest if it's something like that, if it's just as anonymous, and there's things like cyberbullying that happen as well, and if it's cyberbullying too, then people like to hide behind this anonymous mask where you don't know exactly who they are and you can't just confront them. So I think that's my question. How would you work with something like that?
I know, Sophia, you had your hand raised before, so I don't want to go before you.
Oh, no, you can talk whenever you want.
Okay, I'll respond, and then I want to turn it over to you, Sophia, and Lauren too. So schools have bullying and harassment policies for a reason. And ultimately, it is the duty of adults, specifically, your building leaders. So if I was giving advice in the situation that you described with anonymous notes, if you went to the counselor and felt like nothing was changing, I think it would be very appropriate to tell your school principal. And sometimes it can be helpful if you feel comfortable involving your family, your parents or whoever's at home with you. If you feel comfortable having them also reach out with you, then that can be sometimes helpful. But I definitely think that it's important to report those instances, because we have a duty as a school to respond with protocols that hold kids accountable, and hold adults accountable as well, to make sure that everybody is in a safe environment.
Yeah, I would absolutely say the same thing. I would say sometimes I kind of feel like I'm on CSI when I'm like figuring out where notes are coming from or stuff like that. Before TikTok was a thing, I like had to get a TikTok to find out who was sending it. Yeah, anyways, but we can figure stuff out that maybe you can't and don't have the resources to. So go to an adult and we can figure that out if you don't know who it is. But I would also I don't really know if this goes with this question, but just feeling like you're alone. I would say the majority of people that I sit down with who have one's been bullying one or bullying each other, one will say, this is how you've been making me feel. And the other one will say, I've been bullied too, or something along those lines. So just knowing that when you do tell someone, you're probably going to find out that you're not alone in it. And that will make it feel a lot less isolating.
Thank you.
Do you have something to say, Sophia?
Oh my gosh, I'm just always like, anyway, right when I think about those things, like, I just feel so, like, I almost feel guilt because, we were all going through those things, and I wish you, like, obviously I'm 2 years younger than you, and you wouldn't usually come to me, but we're basically all going through the same things, and it really makes me think of, like, my younger cousins who, you know, are still in that position. And, you know, tiny example, when I would go to lunch, I had this thermos that was a booby fat ants. It was called booby fat ants. I'm so sorry, it's not even funny. But it was just like an off-brand thermos that I would always bring to school. And my closest friends, my close
Oh,
She's not
Sophia, we can't hear you, Sophia.
I think that's the best time for encouragement and just advice that I can give them. Thank you. Oh, sorry, did I cut out? Okay. I
It's
basically okay. I basically just said that anytime you might, you know of somebody who is having the same troubles, give advice, give, you know, whatever you can do to prevent a situation like that, because you take that into your life and it helps you grow.
The next question comes from Chloe.
So my question is, in what ways do you think counselors or other staff will help students with mental and social health issues in this school year that will be different from other years prior? And what are some methods you think would help staff and or fellow students in discussing issues unrelated to school? For example, mental health, family issues, and social issues. And sorry, either of you two can respond.
I'm thinking about the question. It's a hefty one. I mean, there's a lot there, and yeah.
There is a lot there. I'm also thinking about it. I read it beforehand, but I'm still like, oh, what do I say? Such an important.
Me too.
I think I would just start by saying that, you know, I can speak for myself as a counselor. I am constantly thinking about how can I adapt things that I was doing in a school building to support students' mental health and connecting them with resources when needed, and providing like education around mental health. How do I adapt that to a virtual environment? And I think it's something that we've never had to do, but what's kind of what Lauren was saying earlier, we're always, as educators, we're always looking at how we can improve things for students. And even in a short amount of time, I think, you know, I've been able to see how things like Zoom can really like be used to conference with students, be a place where community can be built. And I think that you all, like young people, are so resilient and catch up to these to speed so much quicker than we do. Like we have to continue to find ways to adapt those supports to a new environment.
I think one thing that we're starting to see a lot more is that a lot of our students are very comfortable at school, and it's kind of a home, and there's not as much comfort at home talking about mental health and how they're feeling and things like that. And so helping not only to break the stigma with students, but with their families about things that are going on and stuff like that. I know I personally, as a student, was very different at home than I was at school. And these conversations with my mom would be very different than with a school counselor. And now that students are at home all the time, trying to find ways to effectively help them is a challenge. I think that the biggest thing for teachers too is self-care. Is you have to find whatever helps you, and kind of tap into that.
Yeah, and I think, Lauren, when you were mentioning like kids' comfort level talking about some of these things at home versus school, I'm thinking back to my own experience, and I had a similar experience. I remember feeling really different at school versus at home. And another job of counselors is helping families to understand how to talk to their kids about things like mental health, and other topics that maybe don't feel always super comfortable talking with your parents about, is part of our role as well, is to provide families and parents with resources to be able to do that.
We're also seeing a lot of mental health issues among parents, and we're becoming the ones that are helping them, but then also seeing some really cool links of parents relating to their kids in some ways too. So this is not just something that affects, young people or young adults. This, mental health is something that affects everyone, and that's why it needs to be talked about.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of emphasis from, in the state of Oregon, our Department of Education, is saying that mental health is like one of the top 3 things, food and technology being the others. But we're really, like, I can speak for, the colleagues that I have, that we're really pushing that. And I've seen teachers even doing, classroom assignments that is a self-care project. That's your project for class, is coming up with a self-care plan. So yeah, I would just echo what Lauren was saying. Those are all important tools that we need to continue to provide.
Yeah. So on the topic of family, I guess, relationships, how are you, like, assessing situations where students might be facing abuse and neglect at home? Like, because at school, like, that's when you see the signs of it, and you don't really get much face-to-face interaction. So how basically, how would you assess that?
Lauren, you want to take this one?
I was gonna say, if you could, if you have any ideas, let us know. I mean, it's tricky, because we are mandatory reporters, and that in and of itself, there are a lot of times that we have to report things that come up as being nothing, and there are times that we don't end up reporting things that come up to be big things, and that puts a lot of stress. I know I feel a lot of stress talking to someone over Zoom and not knowing really what's going on. And I know statewide, countrywide, calls to DHS have gone down because we don't see kids face to face. And I don't know is the answer. We do the best we can. When we see it, we try to help. But, when students are in their homes, if there is abuse going on in the home, families often do a better job hiding it from us, for lack of a better term. That sounds awful, but it's hard. School was not meant to be done virtually, and that's why this is very hard.
Yeah, I appreciate your answer. I agree with you, Lauren. This is a really difficult question. I'm glad you asked it. And I would say that in my building right now, we're really prioritizing reaching out to families as early as possible, in a way that we can start to see maybe if there are families that, and this is not specific to abuse, but if there are families that really might need more community resources, or maybe there are some safety issues at home, that if we're really communicating in the beginning, and sometimes we do things like go do a home visit and go just stop by, and it's not like, in a you're in trouble way. It's, we really care about you. We want to make sure that you have everything you need to be safe. And then there are those times when we do have to report things if we have reason to believe that there is unsafe activity in a home. But I think we really work, especially, as counselors and teachers too, to really establish connections with families as early as possible and become aware of the needs as early as possible in the school year. And that becomes more complicated in distance learning, but that just means it's all the more important to try to figure it out.
I think that also is important in terms of peers. Students talk to each other, and if you are aware of a peer that's in an unsafe environment, that's absolutely something to get them help with and tell an adult about.
And there are ways to report things anonymously. So if you're not aware of how to do that, I would really encourage you to ask someone from your school. I know at our school, we encourage students to use the Safe Oregon tip line. I don't know if that's something that other districts are using. I see some nods. So just like those kinds of ways of reporting are powerful and important. So make sure that you're aware of those resources.
Yeah, thank you. I was just thinking that like that's probably something really hard for a lot of students, and like it's hard enough like having to be at home all the time, but like imagining that you're going through that situation at the same time. And like what you said about peer reporting, like there's a lot of times when like students will rely on their friends for like mental health support instead of going to a professional or a counselor. So I think that's an important thing to point out, that when there is a situation like that and you are being relied on, that it shouldn't be your responsibility to keep that between you two, that you should bring it out, like bring it to somebody who can actually help improve the situation.
If nobody's going to share, Sophia has the next question.
Okay, and this goes to anybody here who honestly has social media or just would like to share. What is your perspective on social media and how it contributes to a student's mental health? Would you recommend social media if a student is feeling lonely or depressed?
No. I think social media creates an atmosphere of competition and a false sense of reality. I'm not saying all social media is bad, but if you're in a headspace that, you're not your best self, then seeing other people posting things, a lot of time people only post things to show the good in their life or to make themselves look better. And so when you're just seeing those things about people, that might take you down a rabbit hole of all sorts of things. So a lot of times people are posting things that just aren't realistic. I saw some of The Social Dilemma is a great movie and resource. It is scary, accurate. But yeah, I think there are social media like technologies that are great for connecting. If you're connecting with a positive friend or person, like, FaceTime, like those types of things. But I think in general, social media perpetuates a lot of things that are not positive.
I actually just got off of Facebook and Instagram, and I would say I have not missed it, but that's just my experience. I think I would agree with Lauren. I think for things like depression, I think social media can sometimes be unhelpful. I know like the sort of that FOMO phenomenon is real, and I think that can be sometimes more felt by people who maybe are experiencing some depression. And I also think that I would agree that if, ways of connecting with positive people who you feel positively about and who help, more importantly, like make you feel positive and build you up is really important. And if there are forums that allow you to feel like you're part of something bigger than yourself, then that can also sometimes really help with mental health. So maybe that's a different, and you all know more than me, but I know there are a lot of platforms out there where people can come together around maybe issues that they care about or taking action. So I would be a proponent of that, but I do think sometimes there could be some hesitation with other forms of social media.
I definitely agree with that as well. I have seen some of my other friends have had to take like days or weeks off of social media, and they'll share it and be like, hey guys, I'm taking like a mental week off of social media because it has been, I guess, putting me in a negative headspace. Here's my phone number if you need to contact me or whatever. But definitely, it doesn't always help promote the best, I guess, mental headspace. That's just on Instagram though, because that's what I have. But yeah, I mean, with other things like TikTok, it can be a place where people share. I found that people have shared their negative experiences, and it has helped other people connect and help with their mental issues a little bit or get help. But a lot of the times, depending on who you follow, who you see, it can also give you like a negative outlook.
Going on with what Ku'ule said, I know with our halau, with our kapu, we always do like a week without social media. And I personally don't have anything, like any Instagram, Snapchat, like I don't have any type of social media because first of all, I'm not allowed to, but it's not just that, it's I don't really feel a huge need to have it because people, like my friends always tell me, oh, you don't have Instagram, that sucks, like you should get it. And I'm like, well, I'm not really allowed to, and I just like, what's the point? Like, do I really need it? Like I can just simply call my friends. I don't need to feel this reason to interact on like multiple sites that I'm not even going to use that often. But I think I agree with Mrs. Sangster when she said when people post on social media, they try to show their best self. And sometimes when people are at their worst and they see that other people may seem a lot happier than they are at that moment, it doesn't really help with your mental state. And I think taking a break from social media could definitely help, but also like if you like maybe just delete the apps off of your phone or whatever device you're using, it might not make you feel the need to use it, because I know I'm very happy without social media and I'm very content without it, and I don't feel a strong need to get it at any point in my life, because if I'm in the wrong mental state, it could just bring me down a little more than I need to be. And I think, yeah, if you don't need it, then you shouldn't have it, and if you don't want it, then you shouldn't have it. And I think sometimes it's for the best.
Thank you. I mean, just hearing all your feedback, I can tell like you obviously value, yourself, and separating things that will help you grow and that. But I'm
Sophia, sorry, you're cutting out again. You froze.
Yeah, it says my internet connection is unstable. Anyway, I just want to thank you all for giving your input to help me, be better while I grow through life. I'm definitely going to make mistakes, and I can't prevent any of them I can prevent them from happening. And thank you.
The next question comes from Ku'ule.
The last question here, I guess, is directed to the teachers first. Miss Sangster, would you like to answer it first, or if you would answer it first? Have you ever experienced a time where you were working with a student and you felt as though you could not help them in any way? And if so, how did you overcome that?
I mean, I can't think of a specific time. I think there's definitely been a lot of times where, well, most times I wish I could just fix it and wish I could do everything under the sun for someone. But a lot of times the only thing that I can do is just genuinely listen and hear them. And I think that sometimes that's the hardest for me because by personality, I'm a fixer and I want to fix things. But I've kind of in my life and career have had to learn that being genuinely present for someone sometimes is more important than trying to do anything to fix it. So I guess I don't know that really answers the question, but I think yeah, I just try to genuinely listen, and if there's not actually something that I can do, having them know that I hear them and care about them is 100% my goal.
Yeah, I would agree. It's also hard for me to think of a specific situation, but I think that understanding someone's story and really valuing it, and human beings are complex, and young people are complex, and adults are complex, and sometimes we need more information, or we need to talk to other folks who maybe understand things about the student that maybe we don't know, or maybe involving other people in the conversation so that the student feels that their context and their story is really made known. But I do think the importance of just being really genuinely present with an individual is one of the most important things that we can do in our role.
And then I think also just if I can't help them, trying to find someone that can, if there is something that can be done.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else who would like to share? So before we close today, I would like to invite our students who helped put this together to introduce themselves, starting with Kina.
Okay, go ahead.
Aloha.
Louder.
Aloha, my name is Kina. I am in 5th grade. I'm 10 years old, and I go to school in the Beaverton School District. My pronouns are she, her, hers.
Okay.
Mima.
Hi, my name is Meima. I am 14 years old. I'm within the Beaverton School District as a freshman, and my pronouns are she, her, hers.
Kohoku.
Aloha, my name is Kohoku. I am 15 years old. I am a sophomore in the Beaverton School District, and my pronouns are she, her, hers.
Hi, my name is Ku'ule. I'm an 11th grader, junior, in the Beaverton School District. I'm 16, and my pronouns are she, her, hers.
Hi, my name is Sophia, and I'm a 7th grader in the Beaverton School District, and I identify as she, her, hers.
Aloha, I'm Haley. I'm 15 years old, and I'm a sophomore in the Beaverton School District. My pronouns are she, her, and hers.
Aloha, my name is Noelani. I am a freshman in the Beaverton School District, and my pronouns are she, her, hers.
Aloha, my name is Chloe. I'm 14. I am a freshman in the Beaverton School District, and my pronouns are she, her, hers.
Mahalo nui loa to all our amazing panelists and all the youth that joined us today. We hope that today's talk story session has helped you understand and answer many of the questions you all had. Like we said before, we hope to use this platform as a safe place for all youth to come together and talk about the issues that we, a key component of today's society, are faced as we move into the future. No subject is off limits. We hope to continue these sessions weekly, and we need you, our peers, friends, and family. For more information or ways to be involved, please email kaele@kalohcc.org or visit www.kalohcc.org. Again, mahalo for joining us, and we will see you next time.